Welcome to the Darkstream, Voxday, voxday.blogspot.com, and unauthorized.tv. Thanks for tuning in. We have some news to discuss. I'm going to wait until a few more people have the opportunity to show up. I did not have time to get a email notification out, so we ended up just rolling it. Let the folks check in. It's all good. Anyhow, it's pretty hot here. I don't know how things are where you are, but it's definitely warming up. And so we got 170 people here so far. That's good. We'll wait till we get about 250 or 300 or so. When is it going to become Datreon? Yeah, I don't want to have anything to do with that. Archangel loves the Midnight Wars comic. That's cool. In fact, thanks and a shout out to Bounding Into Comics. They did a nice little piece on Midnight's War, so that was cool. Good to see. And you're not going to have to wait a week for it. In fact, tomorrow the next episode is going to go up. All 4 episodes need to be up before June 30th, and so we'll arrange to make that happen, of course. Anyhow, so what's going on is, first of all, I believe everyone is now clear on the way that the Patreon lawsuit against the 72 Bears is going to be handled. And Mark Rondazza, who is a fairly well-known First Amendment expert and smart guy, came highly recommended by some people that we know. We decided to talk to him, and Owen has engaged him and is he'll be taking care of the lawsuit for the 72 Bears, especially related to this emergency injunction hearing on July 13th. And so, you know, the interesting thing about this is that, as I've said, the whole point is to try to further delay the arbitrations. But as with all such things, you know, one deception means that you have opportunities to expose new weaknesses. And in fact, just today, we finally got the evidence that we needed to prove beyond any shadow of a doubt that Patreon is in default of all of those arbitrations. Now, it's up to the arbitrator to decide the extent to which they sanction or whether they just issue a default judgment. But there's absolutely no question now. There's no reason to discuss it at all. It's very, very clear that Patreon did not pay the filing fees for the arbitrations within the 30 days of the invoice date specified. You know, now we've known this from the beginning. I mean, this is the whole reason that they even have this lawsuit is because we didn't file, or the Bears didn't file their arbitrations until January. That's what gave Patreon the opportunity to modify its contract in response to what they'd been told was going to happen. But they didn't pay the filing fees. The invoice date was January 15th. They had 30 days to do it. It was not paid by February 14th. And so, obviously there's never a guarantee that an arbitrator or a judge is going to do exactly the right thing. But, the evidence is clear. The case is closed. And so, in addition to that, and all of the Dread Ilk know, in addition to that, there's been over, to my knowledge, over 160 of the new notices that have been sent to Patreon. And those arbitrations will begin, and those don't have anything to do with the stuff related to the change in the terms related to the tortious interference that Patreon is using as the basis for their lawsuit. So now one thing that I wanted to pass on from the law firm, which is that if you're one of the 72 bears, don't contact the lawyers, don't ask them questions. Right now they are busy preparing the defenses, and this is not the time to request very expensive hand-holding, warm fuzzies, and reassurances. That's not what they're there for. And so if there's questions, I believe Owen has provided an email address. You can send your questions there, and they will be answered. But when you've got a group action like this, then you don't want to have 72 people pestering the people who are trying to get the work done, just because you're understandably concerned, wanting to know what's going on, etc., etc. It's totally understandable, but it's not going to accomplish anything. So I would encourage everybody to just sit tight, have some confidence in the team. Owen's doing the right thing. Owen has stepped up. He's engaged the lawyers, and I have every reason to expect not just a positive, but a very positive outcome when they get to the hearing on the 13th. So now furthermore, this is all going to start going public possibly as soon as tomorrow. So the Daily Beast contacted Owen. They contacted at least one of the lawyers, and it looks like they're going to be doing a story that is basically, Owen is anti-Semitic and he got his users in trouble. Boy, wasn't that a mistake. And so so that's what they're trying to push. But of course, what this is going to do is that it is going to bring the whole thing out into the open, and people are going to, of course it's going to be a hit piece. It's absolutely going to be a hit piece. But here's the thing, is that it is going to open the discussion. And people are going to be looking at, gee, why is Patreon suing its users? And the answer is very clear, because they are losing badly in arbitration, and there is more than a little reason to believe that they are on the verge of going bankrupt. If you run the numbers, if you run the publicly available numbers, Patreon's revenue based on the income reported by Graphtreon, they bring in, over the last 12 months, they've brought in around about $140 million or so. But they pay out 90% of that money to the creators. They pay another 5% of that money to the payment processors. So what that means is that over the last 12 months, their average income, their average revenue is about $783,000. Now, maybe they've got some other sources of income. You know, maybe they've got some hidden deals that we don't know about. But what we do know is that based on the publicly available, publicly reported numbers, they have about $783,000 a month coming in. Now that's pretty great, right? Certainly better than unauthorized is doing. Certainly better than Castalia is doing. You know, both unauthorized and Castalia Library are doing great, but we're not doing $783,000 a month. Here's the difference, though. Even after laying off 13% of their staff, which was 30 people, and if you do the math there, you know they've got 200 employees. Furthermore, they have 50,000 square feet of real estate that they rent in San Francisco. So if you do all the math, and I talked to some people who are in Silicon Valley, they know what the going rates are at companies like this and so forth. Their burn rate is probably round about 2.5 million per month. So what that means is that they're losing something on the order of 1.5 to 1.65 million per month. Somewhere between 1.5 and 1.7 million. So even though they were given, since 2013, even though they were given $165 million, you know, 60 million of that came in last July. Why did they need another 60 million when they'd already raised 105 million? Because they're burning nearly $2 million a month, just going up in flames. And the CEO himself said that their business model is not sustainable. And so what their game plan was to do what Twitter did, to do what Facebook did, and live off of everybody, live off the money that they were giving from the investors, build up enough of a user base that they could go public or that they could get purchased, etc., etc., right? That's the game. They always have to stay ahead of the tiger. And yeah, they wanted to do an IPO. Well, guess what? The stock market's had an all-time high. There's no IPO. They were planning to do this. They were shooting to do this. That's why you saw those puff pieces in places like Forbes or Fortune where they were talking about Patreon, the next trillion-dollar company, the next unicorn. Well, that's not happening. And not only is it not happening, but the costs of the arbitration could actually be measured in the tens of millions of dollars, depending on how many people decide to take objection to the fact that Patreon has, in writing, claimed that its creators are not consumers and are not afforded the protection of the consumer protection laws. Not only that, they've claimed that they don't have to obey the EU's general data protection regulations. I mean, the fact that they've done this stuff to Owen and to the Bears that was completely against the rules. Their contract says very clearly group actions are not permitted. In the arbitrations, it's been determined time and time again, group actions are not permitted. And what did they bring in the California court? It's a group action. Now, obviously, you can't ever be certain what a judge is going to do, but what the judge should do is take one look at it and say, This says no group actions. You brought a group action, no injunction, no case, go back to arbitration. That's what the judge very clearly should do. Will he do it? Well, we'll see. But when you look at what's going on, this is why I was telling you that this lawsuit is an act of complete desperation. And I think that you're going to see that uncovered as time goes on, because more and more people are going to start looking at it as soon as the Daily Beast runs this article. You're going to start seeing stuff being discussed on the tech blogs. You're going to see places like TechCrunch and Slashdot starting to look into this stuff, because there's other funny things as well. Patreon has reported a 40% increase in its revenue since the coronavirus began. Does that sound credible to you? And so it's especially dubious, the idea that their number of creators and the number of pledges coming in has increased 40%, when the number of YouTube subscribers that belong to all of their creators have actually dropped by 50%. How does that make any sense at all? Now, I don't know, but I personally suspect that what we're seeing is the same thing that we've seen at Twitter, the same thing that we've seen at Facebook, and is basically fake accounts. Patreon has come right out and said that they plan to they plan to incentivize their employees to support creators of color. Now, if you think about what that actually means, it means that Patreon is going to give money directly to the creators. They're openly saying that they're going to pump up their numbers. And we've seen the numbers get pumped up. Go to Graphtreon. Go to Graphtreon and take a look at, make sure you click on the 1 year, and you can see a plunge at the beginning of March, and then suddenly, boom, this massive V-shaped recovery. It's possible that it's legitimate, but it doesn't look very legitimate. And so, just like they talk about how when the tide starts going out, that's when you see who is naked. Richard says they're incentivizing their creators. Yeah, that's actually what I suspect. I think that there's quite possibly, I'm guessing that there are fake creators that are being funded within the company, because that would keep the money in the company, just takes a little bit of a hit for the processing, but it makes their numbers look much better than they actually are. And nobody from the outside would have any idea, unless you've got insight into what their actual bank balances are. So Richard says that makes sense. It does make sense. Doesn't mean it's true. We don't know, but certainly it would be a what if some creators are AI bots? Well, yeah, that's what I think, that some of the creators, some of these new 40% creators are probably some form of bot. Do you think this hit piece will give DLive pause regarding Big Bear? No, I don't. I don't think I don't think it's going to be a very serious hit piece. I think it's mostly going to be a haha, look how stupid he is piece. He got his own fans sued. It's not money laundering. What it actually is accounting fraud. So, I mean, it's similar to what companies do when they, buy their own stock. in order to drive the stock prices up. But, you know, we'll see. Somebody says, is there any financial remuneration for the bears that were served? For what? They haven't paid for anything. You know, I mean, what you have to spend something before there's remuneration, and I'm quite confident that those bills will be taken care of probably by Patreon. Let's see here. My damages are nothing, and I demand compensation. Yeah, so it's going to be interesting to see how this all shakes out. But I'm, you know, normally we would not recommend that anyone talk to the media. In this particular case, I think that Owen did talk to them. I think that it makes sense because there's a lot of just basic facts that need to be addressed, and whether they run them or not doesn't really matter. Owen's got the questions, Owen's addressed them, and I'm sure that he will, if his responses are not quoted in full on the piece, then he'll talk about it, and I'll talk about it on a future Darkstream, and we'll go over the details. So Macro Lens says lots of startup companies are in fake it till you make it. Yeah, let me see if I can pop up some of these. I think I actually grabbed some of these screenshots, and we can see if any of these things make sense here. Okay, that's not it. I mean, I wasn't really preparing this stuff, so okay, here we go. I should probably check and figure out what these things are before I pop them up live on the screen for everyone to look at, huh? That's all we need. Okay, so I don't have the Graphtreon stuff there. Here's some downloads. I hate it when they organize stuff for you. Yeah, I can't find anything when they start organizing stuff by date and whatnot. Anyhow, oh, here we go. Patreon 2019. Okay, so here is a graph from, now this is from April, so this is kind of older. But now look at this. And these numbers are still relevant. The Twitter, I think, is now flat or even up 4%. But the point is it's not going up, okay? The YouTube subscribers are still down very, very far. And so, but then if you look at what's being reported with regards to the numbers of creators, it doesn't add up. I mean, look at this here. Look at how it took off. So this was over the course of 1 year, right? Now it's gotten even worse. Look at how the number of creators was flat right up until April, and then it suddenly explodes upwards. It's actually gone up considerably now. This was only showing estimated monthly payouts of 16.7 million. They now go up to 19 million in estimated monthly payouts. Individual pledges are up over 40% now. The estimated monthly payouts are way up too. And yet, if you look at these, or if you look at the updated numbers, the YouTube subscribers to those creators are down nearly 50%. So what's real? What's real? I'm very, very dubious that those numbers are legitimate. You know, the Patreon creators that I know, Chuck Dixon and Arkhaven, the Castalia one, those are both pretty flat. And by the way, my apologies to the Castalia subscribers. They finally got the ebook and the audiobook out, so it's now out. You can War Dogs #3, Metal Monsters. It's a great book. You know, if you haven't subscribed yet to that Patreon, you might want to do that while there's still a Patreon to subscribe to. Obviously, we will do something about that. Here, I'm gonna pull this up. I mean, you have to see this to believe it. It's unbelievable. Okay, so we go to Patreon stats, right? And then we go to 1 year. Okay, and 1 year. Now I'm going to pull that up on the stream. Add source, screen capture, window capture. Okay, so have a look at this here. So this is what we were seeing before, right? It was all pretty flat. And then all of a sudden, it's supposed we see this drop off right at the beginning of the coronavirus period. And then suddenly, so they go as low as down to what? 10.1 million at the beginning of March. And now we're supposed to believe by the end of June that they're suddenly nearly doubled to 19 million. I mean, does that seem credible? Their estimated monthly payouts are up 50% in the year, supposedly. And yet, look at this. The YouTube subscribers are still down 20%. How do your creators end up with 20% less YouTube subscribers when you've got 50% more of them? You know, how do you explain that? I don't know that you can. But it's definitely an interesting dilemma, interesting problem to consider. Watcher Bear says, I bought Corporate Cancer today. The title with the photo of a doctor with a mask on is unintentionally prophetic and is a wink from God. I don't know about that. I just thought it was, you know, inspired cover design, in my opinion. Love your streams. Thanks, Watcher Bear. Appreciate that. Let's see here. That's okay. You can go ahead and send chats now. I've covered the main thing that I wanted to cover. Yes, the noticing too is still relevant, but you can't bring an arbitration for 30 days until after you get the notice in. But you can still do it. Dennis Rusky Bear says, they may have expected loss of users and used fake accounts to make it not look bad and unintentionally made too many fake accounts. I don't think so. I think that they need to generate momentum, and they weren't getting it, and so they had incentive to create a bot situation. You know, Patreon or not Facebook has admitted to tons of having fake accounts. Twitter has admitted to having fake accounts. It's pretty normal in the social media space for companies to do that. You know, Gab has been accused of having massive numbers of fake accounts. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. Gab has not admitted it, unlike Twitter and Facebook. But the point is, what are the chances, especially a company that we know from personal experience to engage in very sketchy practices and to be fundamentally dishonest? What are the chances that they're not? Karen took the key and said, remember, Vox, the most important thing is to win with dignity and respect your opponent. Tips Fedora. Yeah, I don't know about that. Brian Kenny says, I only know fans got a lot of new creators, but content creators make less money than they did before oversupply. Right, but they're saying that they're bringing in more money. They're saying they're bringing in 50% more money. So how does that work? I don't think of Parlay or Parler, however it's pronounced, because I use Social Galactic. You know, I'm not interested in mainstream general purpose social media platforms. I prefer private curated platforms. Are you Italian, Vox? Well, that depends. Are you a civic nationalist? If you're a civic nationalist, I'm Italian. Hi, Vox. When day 31 rolls around, what happens? I don't know what you're talking about. If you're talking about the notice, what that means is if they haven't changed their terms of use back to the old terms of use, then you have the right and the ability to bring an arbitration against them for the deceptive practices and the attempt to strip you of your consumer rights. Major Kong says, you just need to watch Jack Conte talking to see where Patreon's fundamental problem is. Well, their fundamental problem is that they have way too many employees, and their expenses are way too high for what would otherwise be a perfectly good business. It's a fundamentally sound business concept, but the execution is pretty poor because they don't have very good technical people. Their databases are basically spreadsheets. We know exactly how they keep their accounts because there was a data breach not long after Owen was deplatformed, and they handed over the account information of 2,700 people to Owen. And so, and the reason that it happened is because their processes were so amateurish that it was just somebody basically grabbing a spreadsheet and slapping an email address on it. So, yeah, I mean, they've got no reason whatsoever to be in Silicon Valley or to be in downtown San Francisco and all that. I mean, it's all just for show. PFO Dynamite says, nobody says, I think I might be a gamma. That's not quite true. Sean Patrick O'James says, Subscribestar has the same business model, but without a censorship department. Well, it's not the censorship department that is the fundamental problem. I mean, that's the problem that might finish them off. But the real problem that they have is that they just hired too many people. They were focused on, creating $1 trillion valuation company. I mean, the valuation of Patreon on paper is $450 million. That's absurd. It's absolutely absurd. I do think that Biden will be the nominee, yes. So, anyhow, that's the update. That's what's going on. Also, I need to mention before we go on, we're going to be making some changes. We're going to be making some changes to the Castalia library subscriptions because, frankly, the general catch-up model is getting out of hand. There's so many people. So what we're going to do is start doing issue-specific catch-ups. So we'll probably introduce that tomorrow. By the way, I do have a new picture that you can see. We showed you the library yesterday, the Libraria version of Awake in the Nightland. This is book 3. And we now finally got the corrected mock-up for Awake in the Nightland, the library version, which has a silvered page edges. So it's going to be a little unusual. We thought that the black and silver worked with the text better for the library edition, and so and then the Libraria goatskin version is midnight blue. Gordy says, I got confused with the catch-up. I signed up monthly last week and did one 125 catch-up. Then if you signed up monthly and you did one catch-up, presumably you did Libraria. And so that means that you have purchased the Divine Comedy, the goatskin version. So if you want one of these older books, you need to do you'll need to do a specific catch-up on those. So just let's see. Oh, I see. Grimenight, you're the one. I signed up for the regular, but subscribe to the catch-up. We'll sort it out. We'll sort it out. It's not a problem. But we're going to simplify the whole thing with book-specific catch-ups, and that should make things a lot simpler for everybody. Also, I've got good news for the early subscribers, because the library version of the meditations and the Libraria version of the meditations are now going out to all US subscribers. And so people should start receiving them early next week. So I'm very much looking forward to hearing what people think of those, and seeing what the response is. But one thing that we've got to discuss, we're already getting to this point, is we're doing print runs that are 3 times larger than we expected to be doing at this point. We haven't even begun. Letting the book collecting world know about this. And so we're going to need to decide what should the maximum print run for the Castalia Library subscription be. We don't want it to be beyond a certain point. So for those of you who are library subscribers, I'd be curious to know, what's the maximum number that you'd like to see the library print runs be? Obviously beyond a certain point, we don't want to go beyond a certain point, because then they become less valuable. We don't want them to be generic. We're not going to do print on demand. So I think the larger print runs, I need to find this document. I have a list of all of these. John De La Rose says 1,000 or 2,500 tends to be the collectible sweet spot. Yeah, I think that 2,500. Sean, we're already at 750. The library print runs are already 750. But here's the point, that we can't just leave it there, because then we don't have anything for the traditional book collecting crowd. Franklin Library books are very, very valuable, and they were done, in the, I know I saw in the 2,200 range. There may have been more. They went down to 900, they went up to 2,200. So Doug Cannon says, Vox, is the demise of European Americans baked into the cake at this point? No, definitely not. And Doug, this is just a stupid question here. Our females overwhelmingly appear to prefer dating and marrying males of other races versus their own. That's absolutely false. That could not be more false. The most desirable men and the most desirable men on dating applications are always white men. The most pursued women are Asian women followed by white women. So, you know, you're believing what you're seeing on commercials, you're believing what you're seeing on advertising and television shows. It's flat out not true. Yeah, Deus Wolf, but you're talking about different. You're talking about different Franklin Library books. There's different runs of the different books. I mean, you know, you can't judge the value by the very common ones. So. Let's see. Macro says maybe double the number. Yeah, I mean, I don't know yet what the number will be. I don't believe. I'm quite confident that it will not be more than 5,000. I think we did 2,500 for the Comic Gold logo editions, and that seemed to work pretty well. PFO Dynamite said, I subscribed to Castalia Deluxe from the beginning. Where do I sit right now? You are getting everything. I mean, you're getting, not everything, you're getting all of the Castalia Library books. So starting with the missionaries, which you should have if you're in the States, you don't have yet if you're not. Then the Meditations, which is shipping. Then Awaken the Nightland. Then the Divine Comedy. And then Plutarch Volume 1 will be the next book. So, oh, is Lacey here? Yeah, Lacey's doing a great job with Hypergamouse. She's one of the rare female illustrators in comics. She does a great job, and she's a delight to work with. And unsurprisingly, Archaven never gets lionized for this. It's very strange. So, Charlie says, hey Vox, I made a stance against BLM and am getting swarmed by SJWs. Any advice on weathering the storm and fighting back? Thanks. Yeah, don't directly address the stuff that they say. Just keep throwing memes up there. All they do is attack. They have no defense. So just keep hitting them, and don't bother defending yourself. There's no need to defend yourself against them. PFO Dynamite said, I sent an address request from May this week. Will I get the, what, I don't know what you, will I get the, look, don't ask dumb questions like that. Will I get the book I mixed? What on earth are you talking about? Do you think I can read your mind through the internet? I mean, I don't even know what you mean by the book I missed. You just said you've been subscribed from the beginning. We've only shipped out one book. You know, so, you know, if you have a question, I'm not here to do tech support. This is called the Darkstream. It's not called Castalia Tech Support. So send if you have a question, send an email to library@castaliahouse.com and they'll get it sorted out. But there are literally hundreds of subscribers, all of whom subscribe at different times. And it is absolutely impossible to even try to answer questions like that. So just let's not, you know, there was somebody who was trying to figure out how to unsubscribe from unauthorized here. And, you know, I came down pretty harshly on him. I'm just flat out not going to address tech support questions of any kind for any reason. Okay? I mean, maybe we'll do a tech support stream at some point in time, you know, but, but I mean, look, if you want to understand why I am often impatient and I sound irritable when we're talking to valued customers and so forth. I'll give you an example. I can tell what kind of mobile device somebody is using when they send me a, I can't log into unauthorized. What I tell them is, you're probably on an iOS device like an iPhone. You're copy and pasting from the iPhone, and what the iPhone does is it copies lowercase and it pastes the first letter uppercase, and that will screw you up. Now, we should probably, I mean, on the one hand, it's not considered to be a wise security move, but we could avoid all those questions and all those problems if we just assume that people who use Apple phones don't know what happens when they copy and paste. And we've we've probably sent 100, maybe 120 emails to people who are like, I can't log in. Now, we sent very clear instructions. Go here to this specific site, use this email address. Make sure it's all lowercase. Here's your temporary password. Boom, boom, boom. And 90% of the people are able to do that. No problem. But nevertheless, there's always at least that 5% that can't follow the directions for one reason or another. Now, I don't really blame these people because none of them realize it. None of them realize that, in fact, the only reason that we caught onto it right away was because one of the first people to complain about it, that they couldn't log in, we said, use lowercase. He said, I am. And then he sent a screenshot to prove it. And I replied to the screenshot and said, dude, look at the screenshot. That's a capital letter at the beginning of your email address. Oh. He said, well, I don't understand. I didn't type it in. I just copy and pasted it. And so I called up a friend of mine who uses an iPhone because I don't use Apple products. And I said, would you copy and paste an email address? And so he did. And I said, did it change the first letter to a capital? And he said, oh yeah, it did. Boom. There you go. So, anyhow, so that's what's going on. Why would Apple capitalize email addresses? I have no idea. Why would you ever paste something that is different than you copied? That makes no sense to me. Kenny Francis sends $20 without a question, so thank you, Kenny. Welcome to Bronze Pack, Andrew J. Thank you, PFO Dynamite. And by the way, I'm not ragging on you about this. I very much appreciate that you've been a supporter of the library from the beginning, obviously, since you call it deluxe. But the point is just that I can't answer questions like those here. Welcome to Silver Pack, Melanie. Fubear says, I got into an email argument with Werner Vinge in the 2000s about our society collapsing from lack of people able to operate the tech versus his thesis of acceleration into singularity. Yeah, all you have to do is use any consumer software product and we are not heading into the singularity. We are clearly heading towards raising the question of whether indoor plumbing is going to survive. So anyhow, I'm going to let you go. So thank you for tuning in. I'm going to put the new Quantum Mortis up on Webtoons right now. So if you're interested in that, check it out. And tomorrow, because I jumped the gun on Alt Hero, there will not be a new Alt Hero issue, but there will be a new Midnight Wars episode. So have a good evening. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Voxday, and this is the Darkstream.